Imagine this scenario. Someone screams at you, accuses you unfairly, provokes you intentionally, expecting you to lose your temper. But instead of exploding, you do something far more powerful. You remain completely calm. Your heartbeat stays steady. Your voice stays clear. Your eyes remain unreadable. This is called strategic detachment, the highest form of emotional mastery. Most people think power comes from responding louder, stronger, more forcefully. They're wrong. Real power doesn't shout. It whispers. It doesn't explode. It observes. It doesn't lose control. It takes control through deliberate detachment. Because when someone else loses emotional control, they become predictable. And you become untouchable. Their anger, fear, or chaos. These are their weaknesses. Your calmness, silence, and logic are your weapons. This isn't about being emotionless. It's about absolute psychological clarity. Because in any conflict, the person who maintains their composure controls everything. Strategic detachment is your ability to step back mentally, to distance yourself emotionally, to observe rather than react. And it's precisely this detachment that makes others fear you. Because your calmness is something they cannot decode or manipulate. In this video, you'll learn how to master this level of emotional power, how to remain calm and indifferent in the face of intense emotional manipulation, how to use detachment to make others feel insecure, unstable, and out of control, how to turn their emotional chaos into your strategic advantage. Because when you master strategic detachment, you don't just avoid conflict, you control it completely. Let's begin. Part 1. Why detachment makes you powerful. Most people confuse detachment with weakness, believing that emotional intensity demonstrates strength, passion, or courage. They couldn't be more wrong. True power comes from your ability to detach, to remain utterly neutral and completely unbothered by emotional chaos around you. Why? Because emotional explosions are nothing more than signs of lost control. The louder someone becomes, the clearer their weakness. They're desperate to pull you into their emotional storm. But when you refuse to engage, you deny them the power they crave. Here's exactly why detachment is your ultimate psychological advantage. 1. You become impossible to manipulate. Emotional manipulators rely on reactions. They need your anger, sadness, or guilt. But your detachment starves them of emotional feedback. Without your reaction, their power evaporates instantly. 2. You create instant psychological dominance. When others lose control, they surrender psychological territory. Your calmness claims that territory without effort. They look to you for stability, unknowingly submitting to your dominance. Not because you forced it, but because your detachment silently demands respect. 3. Your indifference provokes insecurity. Nothing unnerves emotional manipulators more than your lack of reaction. They need your validation, your anger, your fear, to feel important. Your cold detachment denies them this reassurance, triggering their insecurity and self-doubt. 4. You become unpredictable and uncontrollable. When you're emotionally detached, your moves become impossible to predict. They can't anticipate your reactions because you have none, making it impossible for them to strategize against you. You become an unsolvable puzzle, and unpredictability is always a powerful psychological weapon. 5. You maintain unwavering clarity. Emotional reactions cloud judgment, but detachment sharpens it. In the heat of emotional chaos, your clear logic sees every solution, every weakness, every opportunity clearly. You're always making decisions from a position of strength, clarity, and control. Detachment isn't coldness. It's clarity. It's not avoidance. It's dominance. And when you master it, you become emotionally invincible. No manipulation can touch you. No emotional outburst can shake you. You become the ultimate authority in every interaction, not by reacting, but by choosing exactly when, how, and if you engage. Part 2. Creating psychological distance, maintaining clarity under pressure. When someone attacks you emotionally, their first goal is simple: pull you in. They want your anger, fear, or guilt, because emotion makes you predictable. But what happens if they try to pull you in, and you simply step back? This is called psychological distance. It's your ability to mentally separate yourself from the emotional chaos around you, to detach and observe calmly, as if you're watching events unfold from a distance, unaffected, indifferent, and untouchable. Here's exactly how to master this tactic. 1. View emotions as external, not internal. When someone screams, manipulates, or provokes, picture their emotions as something completely separate from you. A storm outside your mental fortress. You don't engage storms, you wait them out. By seeing emotions as external events, you remain calm, unmoved, and perfectly clear. 2. The observer mindset. Mentally remove yourself from the situation. Imagine you're observing from above as a detached observer rather than an emotional participant. The moment you switch into observer mode, the emotional storm loses its intensity. Your perspective becomes clinical, your logic sharpens, and your emotional reaction vanishes. 3. Neutrality is your shield. Neutrality isn't weakness, it's protection. Keep your voice neutral. Keep your expression neutral. Keep your posture neutral. Neutrality gives them nothing to grasp onto emotionally, leaving them powerless. Their attempts to escalate only highlight their own instability. 4. Refuse emotional responsibility. Their emotional chaos is not yours to manage. Their anger, guilt, or frustration does not belong to you. Don't accept it. Remind yourself clearly, I'm not responsible for their emotions. You only manage your reactions, not theirs. This refusal instantly creates psychological distance. 5. Delay your response. Don't rush to react. Take a breath, pause, and step back mentally. Your delayed response creates confusion, uncertainty, and psychological discomfort for your opponent. In that moment, you regain control, because clarity returns when urgency is removed. Psychological distance isn't just a defensive tactic, it's strategic offense. Because the moment your opponent realizes you're unaffected, they panic, becoming weaker, more predictable, and more vulnerable. Your calmness under pressure becomes a powerful psychological statement: you can't control me. And this, above all, is how you dominate emotional interactions. Not through force, but through detachment and absolute psychological clarity. Part 3. Using tactical silence to control emotional outbursts. In emotional warfare, the loudest voice isn't the strongest. It's often the weakest. Noise is vulnerability. Emotion is instability. But silence, calm, strategic silence, is true psychological power. When others explode emotionally, they expect you to explode with them. They count on your reaction to validate their anger, their aggression, or their frustration. But imagine what happens when their anger meets nothing but silence. Their emotional power collapses immediately. Not because you argued, not because you resisted, but precisely because you didn't. This is tactical silence. Here's how to wield it expertly. 1. Silence is control. When someone's emotions escalate, don't match their volume. Don't respond. Remain quiet and still. Your silence instantly reverses the power dynamic. They lose control of their emotional rhythm. Their anger now feels irrational, uncomfortable, and isolated. 2. Let them exhaust themselves. Emotion needs fuel to survive. Silence starves emotion. Let their anger or frustration burn out. Give no response, no reaction, no acknowledgement. Soon, they're left alone, exhausted, embarrassed, facing the emptiness of their own emotional outburst. 3. Silence magnifies their weakness. Anger relies on validation. Without your reaction, their anger looks childish. Frustration demands confrontation. Without your response, their frustration becomes powerless. Your silence highlights the absurdity of their behavior, forcing self-awareness they desperately want to avoid. 4. Silence creates tension, your advantage. Strategic silence creates psychological tension, forcing them to speak more, to explain themselves, to justify their anger. Every extra word they say weakens their position further, handing you valuable psychological leverage without effort. 5. Control the timing of your words. Only speak after they've emotionally drained themselves. Respond briefly, calmly, and logically, completely untouched by their emotional intensity. Your minimal response, after prolonged silence, becomes incredibly powerful. Clarity against chaos, logic against emotion, control against instability. They quickly realize their emotional tactic has backfired. Their outburst didn't move you, it only weakened them. Tactical silence isn't passive. It's a silent, devastating strategy of emotional domination. You're not merely avoiding conflict. You're silently orchestrating its outcome without ever raising your voice. That's true psychological control. Part 4. Responding logically instead of emotionally. Emotion clouds your judgment. Logic sharpens it. The moment you respond emotionally, you lose control. But when every response is crafted from cold, detached logic, you become untouchable, unbeatable, an absolute master of psychological warfare. Here's how you respond logically, no matter how intense the emotional attack. 1. Pause before you respond. Your first reaction will always be emotional. Your second, logical. Never respond immediately. Pause, breathe, and give your logic time to engage. Every second you delay, emotions weaken, logic strengthens. Your delayed response is always more calculated, more powerful, more devastatingly effective. 2. State facts, not feelings. Feelings are debatable. Facts are undeniable. When you respond, state clear, undeniable facts. Short sentences, neutral tone, absolute clarity. Their emotional manipulation collapses under your logical precision, leaving them defenseless, unable to twist your words. 3. Respond briefly and calmly. Length weakens logic. Keep it brief, sharp, and calm. Never justify, never over-explain, never show uncertainty. Your short, precise answers communicate total psychological strength. The less you say emotionally, the more dominant you become psychologically. 4. Stay on your agenda, not theirs. Manipulators try to drag you into emotional territory. Refuse it. Keep redirecting the conversation back to your logic, your points, your terms. You control the direction, forcing them to constantly adjust to your logic, making their emotional tactics irrelevant. 5. Use questions to control the conversation. Questions force emotional people into logic. Instead of defending yourself, ask clear, logical questions. What exactly do you mean? What outcome were you expecting from that statement? Why would you say that? Your logical questions dismantle their emotional arguments, forcing them into vulnerable positions of self-explanation. When you master logical response, your opponent's emotional aggression turns into confusion. Their provocations fail. Their manipulations break apart. You haven't just defended yourself. You've completely neutralized them with cold logic. And now they fear you, not because you shouted louder, but because you proved you can't be emotionally provoked, only logically engaged. Become untouchable through strategic detachment. In every interaction, someone controls and someone reacts, someone dominates and someone submits. The difference between these two positions comes down to one thing alone: strategic detachment. When you master emotional detachment, you become immune to manipulation. You become unpredictable, unreadable, impossible to control emotionally. You've learned to remain calm when others explode. You've mastered the art of psychological distance, tactical silence, and cold, logical responses. Now, you no longer play by their emotional rules. You dictate your own terms entirely. Remember this clearly. Every emotional outburst you witness is nothing more than weakness disguised as strength. Every manipulative tactic aimed at you is just a desperate attempt to drag you into their emotional chaos. Your power lies precisely in refusing to be dragged anywhere emotionally. You stand firm, unbothered, detached, because your calmness is louder than their screams. Your silence is heavier than their accusations. Your logic is sharper than their emotional attacks. You've become the person who remains untouched by emotional storms, the calm center amidst chaos, the silent power in the noise. And once you achieve this state of absolute emotional mastery, no one can ever control you again. You become untouchable, not by running from conflict, but by calmly confronting it, always from a position of psychological strength. You don't fear emotional outbursts anymore. You welcome them. Because each outburst reinforces your dominance, your detachment, your control. Strategic detachment isn't just a tactic. It's your new identity. You're now someone who can't be manipulated, can't be destabilized, can't be emotionally controlled. You dictate the terms, you control the tempo, you choose the outcome. This is ultimate psychological freedom. This is true emotional sovereignty. And it's exactly who you've now become. Stay calm, stay detached, stay in control. Because when the world around you explodes emotionally, the only one still standing will be you. Calm, silent, and utterly dominant. You've become untouchable.